Hi, good evening, welcome. It is June 26th, 2020. It's too damn hot, and you're watching Nerd Night Tokyo's third live-streamed edition, Watchwords. On behalf of myself, Andrew, and my co-boss Amanda, and Dawn, and Ian, and Joan, etc., the whole of the Nerd Night team, thank you for joining us tonight. We're the Tokyo branch of a worldwide organization, grouping of independent events. Anyway, brand, I don't know, specializing in talks by experts in an informal setting, usually accompanied by alcoholic beverages. Every month, we bring together 3 smart speakers and a curious crowd for an evening of in-depth talks on a variety of subjects. Now, this event is normally conducted face-to-face in our regular venue Grid in Tokyo, but since March, we've moved online until it becomes safe to bring people together again. So, as you can see, we'll be live streaming again next month. So mark July 17th in your calendars now. Same bat time, same bat channel. Here is a picture of some beautiful Nerd Night Tokyo beakers. They are real scientific-y beakers. Didn't say that very well. Anyway, good for hot or cold liquids. Potable or non-potable. I suggest potable. Also, I suggest not potable, because that would be some kind of plant or shrimp, I suppose. Anyway, I'm drinking out of one of these right now. I don't know if you can hear this. Nerd Night Tokyo is, Nerd Night Tokyo is a production of and fundraiser for the Yokohama Theater Group, or YTG, a non-profit theater company dedicated to creating challenging original works of theater, as well as theater training and education. If you didn't buy a ticket tonight and have since decided you want to support us, or if you want to buy one of these ravishing beakers, head over to ytg.jp and click the support button. Again, that's ytg.jp. Now, the fact that we're online tonight is especially bittersweet because this show marks our 4th birthday. That's right! Nerd Night Tokyo debuted 4 years ago in Tiny Bar Gari Gari in Shimokitazawa with talks on artificial intelligence, lasers, and medieval sword fighting. We usually like to do a little celebrating, maybe serve a little bit of cake. So if you have a treat set aside for yourself, maybe take a minute during the first intermission, have a nibble, and think birthday thoughts. I think I have a cookie around here somewhere. And hey, while I'm looking for that cookie, I'm going to fire up the little trailer I made. It's a little retrospective on year 4. Here we go. Okay, welcome back. And now we come to the agenda for tonight. First up, we have John A. Baumlin Jr. giving a talk on digital tools for democracy. And he's not, as it might sound, talking about dipping your index digit into some ink after you voted. For our second talk, we reach far back into the archives to bring you The Psychology of Magic, a talk by professional magician Steve Marshall. And we'll be wrapping up the evening with Joan Chen and her talk, Password Protected, The Myths and Risks in Cybersecurity. She's going to tell us apparently that 123QWE is a shitty password. The first and third talk tonight will be followed by a live Q&A. So when you have a question, post it in the YouTube chat, and our team, featuring my co-boss Amanda, Don Warren Human, and probably Ian, will pass your questions along to me to ask our speakers. After each of the first two talks, there will be a 7-minute intermission for you to go to the little nerds room or refill your drink, or both. And now, without further preamble, allow me to finally introduce our first speaker. A technologist and activist, John Baumlin has been organizing political movements for the last 4 years. A project manager by trade and a sysadmin by hobby, he has worked to help individuals and organizations of all stripes learn to use data encryption and to self-host in order to take back control of their data. He is currently serving as chair of Democrats Abroad Japan, helping Americans overseas register to vote. All right, give a big virtual hand for John. Yay!
Hey, everyone. Hello. So I hope we're ready to party like it's December 31st, 1983. So welcome to Tools for Digital Democracy. Um, so, I mean, you all have experience with mass surveillance. You may not know it, but you do. There's lots of effective ways to track someone online. Currently browser fingerprinting is pretty effective. It doesn't really matter if you're using a VPN, if you're using the same web browser you browse your bank account and your favorite porn site with. So traditional tools like VPN still mitigates like a bunch of other risks, like your ISP for knowing who you are. They're a useful tool. But today we're going to talk about some of the tools that are really helpful for participating in a protest and growing a larger community out of that. So I'm super happy to be here with you all tonight, talking to a bunch of nerds about encryption for 30 minutes is a lot better than talking to a legislative body about encryption in 90 seconds. So I'm really happy to be here and kind of not super deep, but just kind of really do a good overview of the tools that you can use. I like to think I have a little more experience on this since I'm probably on a couple lists doing political work. I got a call from the about the Black Lives Matter march in Tokyo last weekend from the Tokyo Metropolitan Police. It was kind of a funny conversation. They were like, "Oh, Joan-san, Black Lives Matter no demo ni iku yote ga arimasu ka?" Like, "Hey, are you going to the Black Lives Matter demonstration?" And I was like, heiwa tekina koshi da to kikimashita ga. Like, I heard that was a peaceful march, not not a demonstration or anything that would, revoke visa statuses and things like that. So maybe you guys can sound off in the chat who went to that or who went to the one in Osaka or Fukuoka. So there were a lot around Japan. And for those of you who said yes, you're on a list now too. So let's go over some of these tools. And but before we get started, I just want to make super clear on a legal note that I'm coming to you here today as an individual. I'm not encouraging you to go out and protest in Japan illegally. This is informational. I just want you to know some of the tools that these protests are using. So just as easily, some of what I go over today can be used by journalists and others. So, or you can use it for yourself and your friends and take over your own piece of Seattle and create an autonomous zone, which I've heard in the news lately, apparently. So, but my point is that your choices are your own. I'm not advising you in one direction or another. But what we will do is we will hear from a Hong Kong protester today. And I assure you that all this is very real and very, there's a lot behind the actions that you take. So just want to say, it's June 2020. So these tools may not be effective in the following months or weeks. They may not be effective right now. Security changes happen all the time. So be careful and stay up to date if you plan on using them. So I will open up our slideshow here for you all. And we are going to go here. And we are going to open this for you so you can get a good overview of everything that we'll be doing today. Yep. So we're hearing that the volume's a little low, so I'm going to boost it a little bit for you guys, and you can turn that up a little bit. I'll just get a little closer to my mic, and hopefully you can see the screen pretty well. So, okay, so tools for digital democracy. Let's just go to the first slide here. I just want to start by talking a little bit about encryption and encrypted messaging. So computers were never really designed to, delete anything. You know, you guys can go and delete whatever you want. It doesn't really help you at all. Computers automate. They read, they write, they execute. Nothing is deleted. Deleting is not part of the plan for computers. So you can rip your delete key out of your keyboard. It's a lie. The only tool that you have to make sure that things are protected and only the people who are designed to see them is encryption. So really, it's the only defense that you have. Encryption was a key tool in Hong Kong in 2019 for those protesters, and I just want to example them today. So just a little bit of background. They were protesting the extradition into the Chinese legal system. So just so you know the history there, Hong Kong was under British rule until 1997, when the handover happened from the UK to China, and then Hong Kong was guaranteed independence from those governing systems for 50 years until 2047 under China's jurisdiction. But actually, there were a lot of affronts to that, and it really, really pinnacled last year when there was an extradition law being put up to take people out of the Hong Kong system and put them into the Chinese system. And you don't want to be in the Chinese legal system if you're a protester or otherwise. So what was really special about this protest, though, is that it's one of the most advanced struggles between protesters and government since social media enabled the Arab Spring. So we have really witnessed the effectiveness of these movements. And while it didn't super change their political situation because of how their government is set up, they made huge political wins in Hong Kong organizing in this way. And one of the biggest tools that they used, which you can see on the screen here, is Telegram. So we have some examples here, some of the information that they were able to share with each other. They have things like where police status maps are, what is blocked off, what is barricaded. You can see in the second frame. In the third one, you can see instructions about bus stops and places and roads that are cut off and ones that are being diverted. And in the first frame, you can see them reaching out to really anyone. International Hong Kongers Pray for Australia during the fires that were going on there. And if you take these, you can also get more information from their more encrypted lines. Um, Telegram has this secret chat function, but what it really is a simplified end-to-end encryption tool. So they use, not only do they have the groups that are kind of unsecured and out there for everyone, but they have encrypted lines as well, that you can talk to. It's actually quite funny when you call someone on Telegram. I'm sure people have they have the little emojis to represent the hashes uh, of the key. So you call them up and it's like, oh, okay, you got bubblegum, balloon, smiling monkey, eggplant, right? And the other person's like, okay, great. But yeah, so if things that they can share more on other lines are things like these schedules. They are showing where people are organizing, and then also they have the little stars there if they're applying for a letter of no objection from the police, and then a check mark if it was issued, so people fully understand the risks that they're taking as well. So I thought that was really effective in helping people understand what they're doing, and it's really convenient. But it's it's that we're not here for convenience. This isn't the safest way to communicate anymore. So let's take away, or never really was. So let's take away a look at some protest safety in 2020. So these days, if you're going to go to a protest, you probably want to use an end-to-end encrypted app such as Signal or maybe even Wicker with disappearing messages. So, I mean, really, I would start by going through your phone and just really checking like every single option that you have. I think some Android installations, or maybe all of them now, like automatically upload pictures you take to your Gmail account. So that's um that's a that's not very safe at all. So really go through your whole operating system, consider different operating systems. Um, these the, so Signal is one of the better messaging systems that you can use. It's made by the Freedom of the Press Foundation, and the reason why I personally chose that one is because in 2016 there was a grand jury in the Eastern District of Virginia in the United States to the Signal developers, and because of the architecture of Signal, the only data that they were able to provide was the date and time a user registered with Signal and the last time that user is connected to the Signal service. That's pretty good. That's pretty good as insofar as surveillance and uh, any kind of legal services for information. So they're open source as well, which doesn't take them completely out of the equation. But I'm sure some real crypto nerds in the audience might be like, well, it's not really end-to-end encryption because Telegram exchanges the keys, the encryption keys, and so does Signal, and we'll go into that in a little bit. But that's really good, and I would trust them a lot more than Telegram servers because of this this precedence. So go through your phone, make sure your operating system isn't doing anything too terrible. And you can always change your operating system. There's Lineage OS, which is pretty popular these days. There's a lot of good ones. There's some more security focused ones. One thing you probably want to do is enable full disk encryption on your mobile device. So that way, none of the files can be accessed without actually knowing the, relatively without knowing the actual password for your device. And something you should be really aware of is that that doesn't include your external encryption. Or I mean, your external cards, like your XD cards, things that you plug into your phone. It doesn't help external media at all. And it also doesn't help photos. A lot of your photos are taken non-encrypted. So one thing that you can actually do now on a lot of phones is actually take pictures without unlocking the phone. So you can make sure that the phone has to be unlocked before they can actually access those pictures. And again, make sure they're not being uploaded anywhere without your consent. Um, a good another good one is secure drop for journalists too, if you want to actually send and share that media to a secure cloud service, and you're really serious about protecting your sources. Looking at your photos as well, I'm going to keep going on photos for a little bit because they're such a security risk. You really want to scrub the metadata from your photos. So almost every photo has EXIF data on it. It has data on it that tells you what is the capabilities of your phone, what is the model of your phone, and a whole lot of other data, when the picture was taken, all that kind of stuff. Maybe even the location of where it was taken, if your GPS is on. So there's a couple ways to scrub metadata. Signal does it automatically, which is really nice. Can't be happy enough about that. There are programs that do it. Use at your own risk. Another simple way to scrub metadata, if you just have one or two photos that you want to make sure there's nothing on, is to really just open the photo on your computer, take a screenshot of your desktop, and then cut out the photo. So that's kind of like the old way of doing it. Of course, that does have your computer's information on it, but it's, if you have a secure device, that's kind of the old-fashioned way of doing it. When you go, definitely wear non-descriptive clothing. If you have tattoos somewhere, maybe cover them up. If you have something like that, where you think, that maybe the police are really hostile, and like the Black Lives Matter movements in America right now, you can, even in Hong Kong too, when they had the police were using cameras, Chinese police just walking around with cameras that would scare people away. So use non-descriptive clothing. Always enable airplane mode. Airplane mode really cuts the radio capabilities of your phone down. That's because when you go on an airplane, they don't want interference. But if you turn airplane mode on, then every Wi-Fi and everything kind of, or maybe not the Wi-Fi, but the mobile data, and not too much of a radio buff yet, but all the radio waves will kind of be toned down on your phone. So there's other ways to be detected like that. And do not trust biometric data. So you may think, well, I don't need a huge password. I have biometric data. So I would not trust that, purely because if you have like fingerprint unlock or Face ID, then that's a lot less protection against, really, if there's less protection against compelled face and fingerprint unlocking than there is about compelled password disclosure, because there's a right to be silent, at least in the US. So good information for you to know. But really, I guess this is all wonderful things you can do if you're going to bring your smartphone to an event. But I guess what you really, if you really want to get deep in the weeds around trusting some of these groups, and you don't really want to trust anyone, you can set up your own server, and we'll go into self-hosting in a little bit. But first, let's talk about how this end-to-end encryption works, because that's very, I just wanted to go over some of the basic concepts for people. So this is an example from the Proton Mail blog. And end-to-end encryption, basically, it has two keys. You have your public key and you have your private key. And if you're familiar with PGP, all the other older email technologies, it's all built off that. Well, sort of, the concepts anyway. And basically, if you want to send a message, say you have Bob and you have Alice and you have a server in the middle, and you want to make sure that that message from Bob only goes to Alice, what Bob will do is take Alice's public key anything for Alice can be signed with the public key and encrypt the message so it can only be decrypted by the corresponding private key that Alice has. So Alice has two keys. She has the public key, she has the private key. She gives the public key to literally everyone and anyone, and then they encrypt it using her public key, send it through the server, and then it gets to her encrypted. And then she uses her private key to decrypt that message. And if anything is encrypted with her public key, then only she can open it with her private key. So she doesn't tell anyone her private key. And what some of these services basically are doing is exchanging those keys for you. But there are lots of services that don't. And those are definitely pretty effective. So this is a little simplified. It doesn't really go into the amount of math behind it. But with a little bit of math, you can keep things designed for the people who are supposed to see it. So if there's anything I want you guys to take away from this, it's read, write, execute, and encrypt. There is no delete. Just give up on delete forever. So before we talked about self-hosting, and the primary reason I would say to do that is to subvert censorship, and not necessarily from governments, but even from corporations or other entities interested in your data. So you see lately that governments have deputized companies under their jurisdiction to pretty much hand over any data at any request. Sometimes at no request, as Mr. Snowden showed us in 2013, and that problem is only getting worse, I assure you. So there are lots of ways and programs to take control over your data. So this is about you taking control over your data. And you can self-host. You can have a centralized setup where it's your server and your security going out to the world. Or ideally, you can share through peer-to-peer. So you'll always want bridges. If you're doing something like a protest or something like that, you'll always want bridges out to public services for easy access for people, or even through Brave Friends or anonymous sources. So basically you need to find a way to organize and stop letting those services dominate your lives in the long term, though. So you can start with that and bring people in, but then you want to create a robust activist network for yourself. So a good way to be that kind of censorship resistant is to use peer-to-peer software. So if you're hosting a server and you're distributing to 1,000 people, if someone gets a warrant, takes down your server, those 1,000 people all lose access. That's the end of it. But if you're hosting a peer-to-peer server and 1,000 people are all sharing, it's a lot harder to shut down 1,000 servers than it is to shut down one. Or even if you're self-hosting, it's a lot more difficult to get a warrant on your self-hosted server than just take the information in a deal that your government has with Google. So there's a lot of ways, a lot of programs, a lot of applications to go about it. It depends on your goals. But something I would highlight is that governments aren't the only ones who really censor. Social media does it a lot, and sometimes in really subtle ways, like content sorting the relevant and interesting, or what they think is relevant and interesting, away from your eyes, or just outright removing it at the request of governments. So one thing that I thought was pretty interesting was the Mastodon network, or the Fediverse, as it's affectionately called by its users. So the Fediverse basically, you probably thought this was Twitter just looking at it, but it's actually not. This is a front-end UI from Pleroma, which, like Mastodon, is a big Fediverse network. So what does Fediverse mean? It means all the nodes are out there. People are self-hosting their own servers. You connect to the server, you connect to the network. So it's very, very, it's kind of an in-between for peer-to-peer. So
There's your local timeline with everyone connected to your node, and then all the nodes are connected together for a more worldwide timeline. You can see on this image, someone here is asking about how the GDPR will affect them. And yeah, you can really use these kinds of technologies. And you might be thinking like, who uses this stuff? This actually has millions of users now, I believe. So it's definitely growing in popularity as people want to move away from content sorting, and they want to move away from algorithms kind of deciding the content they see on social media, and they want to move away from censorship. These are good ways to grow your communities that don't need to rely on a central service. So, I mean, another good example is that you can host an XMPP server. That's a messaging protocol like Fediverse that you can set up servers on. You can start your own, and then you can connect to anyone else who uses that protocol. So it's kind of like a Star Trek Federation kind of deal. Once you're in the network, you can communicate with other people. One thing I wanted to get into a little bit of the weeds about was one more of the upcoming interesting ones. So Mastodon, Pleroma, these are pretty popular. I wanted to talk about one of these more interesting ones that I've been playing around with, which is Beaker Browser. So someone actually went out and designed a peer-to-peer web browser, which is not a new idea, but this has an interesting feature where you can start your website, you can code up your website, and you can share it. The really interesting thing for people who are familiar with peer-to-peer software like BitTorrent or other kinds of torrenting software, you might know that all of the torrent hashes, like the hash of your file, they're all in a big distributed hash table. And that's not really private at all. People can totally scrape your data from the hash table, and that's why torrent takedowns are so popular. But not Beaker Browser. So the Beaker Browser actually takes a hash of a hash and uses that hash of a hash for its own hash table. So there is no tracing back to the original file. It's a lot more private. So only the people who are supposed to be accessing the original hash by sharing the links in the browser can access that. So you code a website, you start a website, you start hosting it on Beaker, you can self-host it just by going up to the top right, click host, and now you're hosting it, just like you would be like a seeder on a torrent system. So the original person doesn't have to host the website anymore. The new hoster and all their peers can host it, and then that can still be accessed. So that's there's lots and lots of projects like this coming up. Things you've heard and things you've never heard before. So today, what I want to wrap up with is just some audio from a Hong Kong protester that I obtained in a journalistic endeavor by using tools like this to communicate and to reach out to people. So I'm going to play that right now, and I will let you all, hope you all enjoy and take these tools and to understand the gravity of how important that these familiarity with these technologies can be.
If there were a few things that I would like people in the US to know is that like about Hong Kong is just how desperate and hopeless I feel our situation is. I mean, I know that there's going to be, I can feel that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, but I just sort of, with the events that have happened in the recent few months, I feel like the tunnel is just getting longer and longer, and the light's just getting farther and farther away. With all authoritarian regimes and states, they eventually all fall. We got the Soviet Union. No one thought that they would crumble one day, but they did. And I'm not saying that there's like zero remnant of the Soviet Union today, but like the state did crumble, and I know that the CCP will one day, the same thing will happen there as well. Yeah, I'd just like to let them know that, I've heard this metaphor being used a lot. Democracy is like oxygen. Freedom is like oxygen. It's something that you don't notice exists until you're being left without it, and then you just start suffocating. We've had the election of, well, a lot of people would ask us, like, okay, does Hong Kong really have democracy? And I'd tell them, I mean, we vote and shit, but does it ever mean anything? I don't think so. Because the way in which we elect our leaders, like I guess you can say system in which we truly have, in which the people's individual votes do matter, are I think the district councils. Those are like, the district councilors just get their seats through popular vote, and that's it. And but then with everything else, with the election of the chief executive, the power of an individual's vote is so little, and so much power is being given to corporate businesses that are and industry leaders that are usually pro-China, that like an individual's vote doesn't really mean anything in the bigger picture. So in order to elect the chief executive, we have a committee in which we vote people onto the committee to elect them. So I think you can say, I'll vote for this person, and this person we elect people to help us vote for the chief executive. And even though the Democratic side, the anti-China side, had won out in every single election since the handover, almost every single one of them has had, almost every single one of the chief executives who were elected out ended up becoming pro-China. So that's like, is that real democracy? I don't really think so. I'll send you to summarize, because it really explains our fake democracy really well. Well, there has been a lot of instances where, there's a really famous instance of a shitty democratic system in which we were trying to elect, the legislative councilor, basically our parliament, was trying to elect a new leader of the House Committee. The House Committee basically decides when the meetings start, and basically with a pro-independent leader of the House Committee, we would basically control whether or not LegCo can pass any laws. And before the protest started, we already had a pro-independent, pro-Hong Kong, pro-democracy head of the House Committee. And ever since the protest started, they've been preventing the passing of a law ever since June. So from June till now, there have been no laws passed, and the filibustering has been amazing, honestly. But China recently stepped in and basically kicked that leader of the House Committee off his chair, and then through a vote in which the Democratic legislators were locked in a room outside where they could vote. They voted in Starry Lee, who was a pro-CCP, pro-China legislator, as a head of the House Committee, and she ran unopposed because literally all the Democratic legislators were locked in a room. Yeah, that's democracy right there. And our system of justice is so pro-police. I guess you guys can say that you have the same problem over there. I'm not too sure about U.S. politics, so I wouldn't comment on that. But just last week, a relative of police living at the police dormitories was found to be in possession of 3 kilograms of crystal meth. The judge said it was very, very likely that she was going to be indicted. But lo and behold, somehow the charges were dropped by the prosecutors, and now the girl walks free. On literally the same day, a female protester who was arrested, was found to be in possession of a 3-meter long, you think I'm going to say pole, but no, she was in possession of a rubber hose, 3 meters long. She got prosecuted and sentenced to 3 months in jail. That's the kind of bullshit we're dealing with here. People aren't joking to say when the justice system of Hong Kong is dead, and our system of prosecutions, that it's just democracy is dead in Hong Kong, or maybe it was never really alive. There's a lot of perspectives on that. And perhaps the biggest blow, and the biggest, like the straw that broke the camel's back, was a national security law. Once a law is passed, Hong Kong effectively becomes, well, it's already passed, but once it's implemented, Hong Kong will effectively become a police state. And yeah, it's just, I don't know how to feel about that, really, because this place I was born in, I grew up in, this place I've known to grow and love so much, like, especially over the last year, it's just gonna change and be taken away from us. And this time we can't even fight back because China decided to circumvent our entire legislative system and implement it directly from the Chinese parliament, effectively undermining the entire concept of one country, two systems, and in practice, annulling the entire basic law, which is Hong Kong's constitution. And there's nothing we can do about that. We can't, however much we protest in Hong Kong, however much, even if we nuke the city, nothing will happen because the parliament is in Beijing, and, can't go over to Beijing and protest, right? We can't even go into Beijing. And yeah, I guess that's like, just tell people of the free world to cherish their freedoms while they can. And yeah, please, yeah, I guess that's all.
Yeah, so some pretty heavy stuff. I just wanted to end today on a note, on a different note, and I just wanted to really just make sure, I know that he said U.S. A lot, but this is true for all Western democracies. It's not just about democracy. You can just, obviously that's super important, and we need to not forget the messages that Defo said, but you can also use these technologies in your own life to reduce the amount of data control that people have over you. The technology is out there. It's just up to you all to use it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. I'm just gonna check the stream, see if I've got one question from early on when you were talking about photos, and Matthias asked, I have a bit of trouble parsing this, but he says, "Where's the information from the photos from that?" I think he's asking, where is the information in the photos that isn't encrypted?
Oh, so when basically anytime you take a photo, it has something called EXIF data, which is EXIF. The point of encrypting is to have it on your phone so people can't get that data unless they seize your phone and break the password. But every photo has EXIF data on it, like almost every photo. Right? And there's a couple other kinds of data as well. So to just summarize that again, you have to scrub it either through a software. I know Linux has some of those built in by default, so you can just use them at the command line. You can use a program to scrub it if you trust who made the program. And you can use software that scrubs it when you upload it. So Signal, I think Signal does that automatically. So if you send an image over Signal, then you know they're going to remove that data for you. On Windows, you can go to properties and see all the data too.
Okay, cool. We've got apparently. I'm hearing through the back end chat that we've got quite a much bigger lag than we usually do, which is why it's taking me a second to get stuff in. Yeah, apparently every photo as EXIF data just came up, so yeah, they're a bit behind us. Okay, so I guess I'm vamping until. We usually have a lot of questions. Maybe you just explained everything really, really well.
Yeah, I think that part of the things that you guys can GUISE guys, I mean girls as well, and non-binaries as well, obviously. You all can you can really have a lot of fun with a lot of these self-hosted services. Something that I wanted to keep this talk because Dafos submitted this audio to us, and I wanted to keep it focused on tools that you would use during a protest and that. But something you can really do that's really, really fun is just start setting up a lot of different self-hosted services. So there's a big GitHub page out there called let's see, it's self-hosted awesome, or awesome-self-hosted. If you just search GitHub awesome-self-hosted, you will find a ton of services that you can use that are all open source. You can run them off your own computers. It just takes a little bit of sysadmin knowledge, but it really you can use things for everything from email, which I don't recommend you start with, to messengers and social media, everything, money management, websites. It's all out there, and it's all free. You know, it's just up to you guys to use it.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Ian just sent a question in the back channel. I think you partly answered it with what you just said, but are you comfortable sharing what other tools that you use personally, other than like aside from the chats and the protest tools?
Sure. Yeah. So one tool that I use to kind of replace Google Docs is CryptPad. CryptPad is really cool because instead of exchanging the keys, it encrypts it client side. So the encryption is a little bit stronger than your average, HTTPS and all that. And if you go to CryptPad, I think they host they host like a demo server that you can sign up for and use. It's a little more advanced and a little more difficult to set up. You have to really know Nginx or whatever load distributor you're using. But it really helped me replace reliance on Google Docs. They have like Conboard. I mean, they have a Conboard even, not just Sheets or Docs or Files or Drive. Really replaces Google Drive. So that's a cool one. What else? I talked today a lot today about Signal. Signal is really cool. It's really good. I genuinely trust them based on that court case. But if you want to do your own thing, you can look into XMPP and look at the XEP-0384 OMEMO encryption. And OMEMO encryption, Signal uses kind of an OMEMO-like algorithm, but it's probably the most secure one to use for messaging. And you asked if I was comfortable saying it. The best part about this stuff is that it's like trustless. When you have a really trustless system where you don't have to trust who's hosting the server, or you have a technology where you can exchange those messages without worrying about that, I think that's where a lot of the relief that some people come in.
So you say trustless. You do have to trust the person you're communicating with, though.
You do have to trust the person you're communicating with.
Because even if you have a self-destructing message, I think it was, I'm trying to remember what show it was on. I think it was Jessica Jones, where there was like a video that deletes after 5 seconds, and she just grabbed another phone and filmed it with the second phone in order to grab that. So you could do something like that. So I guess when it comes down, you have to actually. There is some trust in the system. I know what you mean by trustless on a technical level, but there is some trust in the system, because you do have to trust the person you're communicating with. Although it doesn't, like some of these things, you kind of mentioned it a little bit at the beginning, but some of these tools like Signal, there's an identifier, so at least the person you're talking to, you can be reasonably sure it's the person you're talking to, correct?
Yeah, I mean, the best way obviously is to just meet them in person and then make sure, is this your number? Yes, it is. Okay. And then communicate that way. I mean, that's not always possible. I mean, like, even if you want to stay like more private on Signal, you can just get a SIM card and then use that as the number. So you don't have to use the phone number as your phone number as an identifier. If you like wait in the registration for like 2 minutes, it'll say like, oh, just call me, and then just call like a different number that you bought. Your point is super valid. There's 2 kinds of intelligence. There's human intelligence and signal intelligence. And signal intelligence is kind of the mass surveillance, collecting information, and then there's also human intelligence, which is kind of the surveillance on actual people and then who they're associating with and all that, the more traditional spy movie kind of intelligence. So that's something you definitely have to be aware of. And if you're a journalist and you really, really want to protect your sources, you have to be very careful. I would be using a VPN. I would be using Signal. I would be using Secure Drop, those kinds of tools. If you don't have any technical knowledge, those are not hard to use.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, follow-up question to the photo question. So Matthias asks again. So photos, when saved on your phone, are indeed encrypted?
No. They're usually unencrypted.
Even if you've got full disk encryption on your phone?
I don't know the answer to that. It depends on the version or the operating system. I would. What I would do is, if you're like at a protest and you want to do that, I would take the picture, make sure that it's, your phone is fully encrypted, take the picture, send the picture, and then just make sure that, you don't actually open your phone. So if someone rips it out of your hand while you're using it or tries to confiscate it immediately, then you don't have to worry as much about that. But yeah, a lot of times when you take the pictures themselves are encrypted. It depends on the operating system, though.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, just opening my tool here. Okay, we are going to, I think we're going to call it there. Thank you so much, John.
Yeah, no
that
worries.
was super informative and slightly depressing. But a lot of Nerd Night talks are like that. So I'm gonna slide us over into the countdown. So yeah, everybody, give a hand for John. Thank you, John.
Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate it.
Okay, I've started the clock. We're going to take a 7-minute break. Do what you got to do, nerds. I'll see you back here in 7 minutes. Hey, hey, hey. This is your friendly neighborhood Nerd Night co-boss, Andrew. This is your 2-minute warning. That's what I'm doing. It's your 2-minute warning. So if you haven't got your drink already, now's the time. Run and get it. Be back in your seat, and we're going to start again in 2 minutes. Hey, just a reminder, if you're just joining us now, that Nerd Night Tokyo functions as a fundraiser for the Yokohama Theater Group, which is a non-profit theater company. Obviously, things are shut down right now because of COVID-19, and we're not doing live Nerd Nights and selling tickets and that kind of thing. So, if you'd like to help us out, if you're enjoying yourself tonight, and you can, if you're in a position where you can, I know a lot of us who are freelancers and other types of workers have not got a lot of income right now, but if you do, and you are, and you can, and you want to, check out ytg.jp or any of the tip links that I will have posted in the video description, and help us out. Maybe buy a virtual ticket for 1,000 yen, or whatever you like, whatever you can spare would be helpful to us. Okay. That's it. Thank you so much. Hello and welcome back. In his 30 years as an entertainer, Steve Marshall has been a circus clown, a fire eater, an escape artist, and a comedy magician. He is from Florida, but has made his home in Japan for over 20 years and has traveled the world with his shows and lectures on the art of magic. Recently, he has won 5 Best Actor awards at international film festivals for his leading role in the short film Circus Sam, which I believe was shot in Tokyo. In fact, the reason he can't join us tonight live is because he is remotely attending an awards show to pick up one of those awards. So congratulations, Steve. You can find Steve Marshall on Instagram at Steve Marshall Magic. So I do want to make one slight apology in advance. This is a pre-recorded talk. It includes the original Q&A, but early on in Nerd Night history, we were not yet giving the audience microphones to ask their questions. So what I've had to do is I've had to take existing audio and boost it, so you'll notice a sudden drop-off in quality whenever a member of the audience asks their question. So, as I say, my apologies for that. But now, with no further kerfuffle, let's sit back and enjoy Steve's Nerd Night talk from September 2016, The Psychology of Magic.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to Nerd Night. My name is Steve, and I'm a magician. Now, I've gotten to introduce myself that way professionally for the last 30 years. And I got to admit, it still feels kind of cool. Yeah. You know, I've been doing magic since I was a kid, and whenever I introduce myself as a magician, people always ask me questions. And here's the top 2 questions. Number 1, hi, I'm Steve. I'm a magician. Oh yeah? What instrument do you play? I get that a lot more than you'd think. Number 2, people say, how do you do the trick where you saw a lady in half? Or how does the trick work where you make an elephant float? Or whatever card trick they've seen recently. And I've got to tell you that after studying magic for 30 years, it's actually more interesting of a question to ask why the trick works instead of how it works. Because if I told you how the trick works, it's really not that interesting. I'll tell you a secret. Every magic trick works using duct tape and a paper clip. No kidding. No kidding. The sawing a lady in half, duct tape and a paper clip. Floating elephant, there's some Velcro involved in that one, but it's basically duct tape and a paper clip. So it's actually more interesting to ask how it works. What is it that takes a simple trick and in the minds of the spectators makes it magic? And that's what interests me. So, magicians like to keep their secrets very close to them. We don't like to tell how a trick works because it's not magic anymore. That's the main reason. It takes it somewhere else. It's not fun anymore if you know how it works. So, every magician has a secret bookcase in their house, in case you don't know that. And behind that's a secret room where the magic is kept. So tonight, I'm going to take you behind that secret bookcase with me and show you my special magic room. But what I need everybody to do is on the count of 3, say the magic words, open sesame. You ready? 1, 2, 3.
Open sesame.
Very good. My magic room. We'll talk about the psychology of magic, not how it works, but why it works. Now, I got to tell you something. When I was coming up with this talk, early on, it occurred to me that I could just stand up here and lie to you. I could tell you anything I wanted to, do some cool magic tricks, and you would believe here, believing I'd told you about the psychology of magic when I haven't said anything. But tonight, I promise that everything I tell you will be true. Mostly. Mostly. That's for you to figure out. You see, part of my job description is I'm a liar and a cheat. As a matter of fact, recently, in a very public forum on the internet, somebody was trying to put me down by calling me a charlatan and a trickster. How cool is that? Right? If you're in a regular business and somebody calls you a liar, a cheat, a charlatan, and a trickster, it devastates you. I put it on my resume, It's great. So, like I said, I've been doing magic since I was 14 years old. That's me. That's my dad's leisure suit jacket. This is the first picture I ever had in the newspaper from a community show that I was doing. Get a load of that bow tie. And yes, I was wearing sunglasses on stage. It was the 80s. What can I say? But as I started studying magic and reading magic periodicals, we have our own magazines. And I read an essay by a magician named Paul Harris. Now, Paul Harris was and still is a very prolific creator of magic for magicians. And he started talking about the moment of astonishment, the moment when a trick happens, when something disappears or when something changes in your hand, is that exact moment that the magic happens in your mind. As a matter of fact, this is about the audience, by the way. This is the best audience is intelligent, well-educated, and a little drunk. So I think I've hit the jackpot here tonight. But Paul Harris's quote said, "Astonishment is our natural state of mind." What he meant by that was when we're born, we have a clean slate. We have no preconceived notions, right? As we grow up, everything we see for the first time is magical and astonishing. The first time we see a flower, the first time we smell a flower, every experience is magical. But as we continue to grow up, we learn the names for like 10,000 different things. We learn who we are and who we're supposed to be. We learn the difference between right and wrong, which can vary greatly depending on who's teaching us that lesson. And every one of those things that we learn, we build a little box for. And we put these boxes in our mind and we start stacking them up and they block this natural astonishment. Then all of a sudden the magic boy comes along and does a trick for you and something disappears or something happens and you try to put it in a box, but there's no box there for that thing. And that's when the boxes come down and you're left with that childlike feeling of astonishment. But then, of course, Paul said that actually the astonishment feeling can be left open for, depending on the person, about 10 seconds is about max. And then you start building new boxes. He put it up his sleeve. It's done with mirrors. I don't know how it's done, but it's a trick, right? And then the boxes go back up. And I believe that's why when I do magic, people always say, do another one, do another one, do one more. Because they want to feel that moment, that childlike moment of pure astonishment again. In conclusion, this was cool. He said, astonishment is not an emotion that's created, and it's an existing state that's revealed. And I really like that a lot. So as I continued learning about magic, I came across another quote. And I actually just discovered this one a few years ago. And, this is me walking my dog, by the way. That's the way a magician walks his dog. Yeah. But the quote is, the second principle of magic, things which have once been in contact with each other continue to act on each other at a distance after the physical contact has been severed. Now, This book is not about magic tricks. This book is about the comparison between mythology and religion. But it really hit me when the part about things which have one been in common with each other continue to act on each other at a distance after the physical contact has been severed. Now, I'll give you an example of that. When somebody sees me do a magic trick and they bring a friend back and they want to see the same magic trick, they never say exactly what happened. They go from point A to point Z, and they forget all the little things that happen in the middle. It's easier for me to demonstrate this with this coin, an old coin, and a pencil. Oh, by the way, this table can float. That's all I'm going to say about that. A coin and a pencil. Watch this. This is the vanishing coin trick. I'll stand back so everybody can see it. The vanishing coin trick. Don't take your eyes off the coin because it's going to disappear and you don't want to miss it when it goes. You ready? The vanishing coin trick. I'll use this pencil as my impromptu magic wand. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Oh, it's the pencil that disappears. Oh, wait. It's actually right here. That's when the coin goes. And that. Perfect. All of his boxes just dropped. That's the moment of astonishment. So that's a perfect example. When somebody comes back and asks me to do that trick again, if there's a little time between it, they'll say, do that trick for my friend where you put the coin in your hand and it just disappears. And it's impossible for me to do that. So I bring out this pencil and they don't know what I'm doing. So the coin's over here. I'll show you this one. It's in my pocket. Okay? So first of all, when I do this, I'm breaking one of the very first rules of magic. I'm telling you what I'm going to do before I do it. Usually you don't want to do that. You want to keep the element of surprise. But I'm telling you that I'm going to make this coin disappear. And I'm telling you that because I want you to watch that and only that. But this time, don't watch the coin. Try not to watch it. The eye follows movement, so it's actually kind of difficult. But don't watch the coin. Watch the pencil. Watch the pencil. Here we go. So the coin's going to disappear. 1, 2, 3. It's right here. Now, I get that first moment of astonishment when the pencil's gone. Then I start moving my hand. Now the eye follows movement naturally. So I keep this hand still for right now. I start bringing my finger up. Your eye follows it. Now try not to follow my finger. Watch the coin. As I come up, I call your attention. You're surprised to see the pencil, the second moment of astonishment. As I'm doing that, I turn my body and just drop the coin in my pocket. But in your mind, there's still a coin in my hand. And then I do this and the coin disappears. And that's the moment the magic happens. So that's what I mean. People go from point A to point Z and just remember the coin vanishing and don't remember anything else. And you can do that for your friends. Just practice, practice, practice. So the very personal experience I had with this exact principle was when I was a kid, my uncle did a card trick for me. And the way I remember it is he spread the cards out. I took a card. I looked at it. He told me what the card was. I was about 6 years old. About 20 years later, when I was in my mid-20s, I asked him to do that card trick for me again. I suddenly remembered it. He did it, and it wasn't anything like I remembered it. And I really wish that I wouldn't have asked him to do it again because it turned out to be a very basic card trick that I learned when I was just starting out in magic. So that's about how the mind perceives magic and kind of goes ahead and forgets all the little details that's in between. Now, the easiest person to fool is a scientist. Now, who do you think the most difficult person to fool is? No? A child. A child. A child, because a child has no preconceived notions. When something disappears, when the pencil disappears, a scientist or any adult, actually, I just say scientist to be more dramatic, but any adult, we think in our mind for a second, we go, oh, it disappeared. A kid just goes, oh, it's not there anymore. So a kid will immediately, and I'm talking when I say a kid, like a 2-year-old. I love doing tricks for like little 2-year-old kids because I can see what's exactly happening when I watch their eyes. They see it, and then they immediately start looking around for the pencil. It's not there. It must be there, you know? And it's great. So it's not great for me, but I mean, it's the kid figures it out really easy. So that's how we grow and we start to perceive things a little bit differently. Now, this was taken to an extreme with the scientist fooling thing in the 70s. This is called Project Alpha. This guy, James Randi, found these two young guys, Steve Shaw and Mike Edwards. And has anybody heard of this? Anybody heard of this? You've heard of it? Yeah, Amazing. Yeah, that's the Amazing Randi. Have you heard of Project Alpha? Okay. Well, Amazing Randi is still around. He's a very big skeptic, and he's got $1 million check that he has offered to anybody that can do a psychic demonstration that he can't duplicate using a magic trick. And so far, nobody's ever won the check. He was really big. He was going after Uri Geller. You know Uri Geller. He was the spoon-bending, the psychic back in the 70s. So he gets these two guys who are already doing psychic magic, and he sends them into different universities to their psychic research centers. And he has them fool the scientists. Well, they put them under test conditions, but nobody knew what the test should be. All they did was they watched them really close. And after 2 years, they concluded that they were real psychics. And then Randi holds this big press conference and says, no, they're magicians, right? And it really rocked the scientific world and made them think about, that's what he wanted, to make them think about things differently when they research psychic phenomena. And one of the things they did is they went in with just a couple of forks. Go ahead, just take a look at those forks. Just make sure they're regular forks. All right?
Yep.
All right.
Solid forks.
Hand me one, whichever one you don't want.
I
All right.
want this one.
Okay. What's your name?
Michael.
Michael. All right. Do me a favor. Just if you can extend your hand out like this, just put the fork in your hand like that. Just hold it right there. Just like that, and put your finger, hold it down so it doesn't roll out of your hand. And start to rub it, just right there with your fingertip. Just start to rub it. Now, if you watch mine, what's kind of interesting, watch mine as I rub it. It actually looks like it starts to move. You can see that. Actually, if you let me see your fork. You notice there's quite a bit of difference in the two now. If you can just take that one back. All I have to do is just give this one a little rub like this, and let you go back right to its original position. Now, when they were doing these effects, a lot of magicians do the bend right about here. But what they did was they took it and they started shaking it like this. And this is what really confused the scientists, because they were looking here, and all of a sudden, it started bending here. Then they didn't even touch it. They just threw it in the air, and it came down. Bent. They said, you know, it's okay. Everybody knows that if you take a fork and you just bend it like that, you can straighten it out. And then they just concentrated. Watch this. And give it a little shake. And the fork started to turn. Now, of course, I could just be twisting this with my fingers. But watch the head of the fork. Watch the top. Just turn, turn, turn. And you can see it's totally twisted. Just like that. And you try to take that bend down, you won't be able to do it. So that was some of the effects that they did for the scientists. Yeah, thank you. Thanks. So when I was studying magic, though, my favorite magician was always Harry Houdini, the famous magician and escape artist. And he said, what the eyes see and the ears hear, the mind believes. Now, I want to try something, a little experiment with everybody here. What I want you to do is I want you to take your fingers and clasp them together like this. Everybody do that. All right? And then take your index fingers, clasp your hands really tight, and then take your index fingers and point them up like this. All right? Now, in just a second, don't do it yet, but in just a second, I'm going to ask you to take your index fingers and pull them apart as far as you can and keep them open. All right? So go ahead, pull them apart now. Pull them apart like this. All right? Now, I want you to look at your fingers. Imagine that I'm wrapping a thread around your fingers. And I'm starting to wrap that thread tighter and tighter and tighter. I'm starting to pull that thread tighter. Try to keep them apart. Look at your fingers. Just watch them. That thread will keep getting tighter and tighter and tighter as they gently start to drift together. Yours are already touching. Yeah? Yours are getting close. Just keep thinking of that thread getting tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter. He's really trying hard. This is good. This is good. Keep it up. Yep. Getting tighter And by now, if their fingers haven't touched, they should be quite a bit closer together by now. Is that right? Yeah. Now, okay, this is a physical thing, but what I'm doing, what the eyes see and the ears hear, the mind believes. What I'm doing is I'm giving you this suggestion that a visual that I'm wrapping this thread around your fingers. That's in your mind's eye. That's what you're seeing. And then I'm telling you, I'm saying your fingers are getting closer together. The thread's getting tighter. And then they pull together. So that's an example of how to make your mind to give it suggestions to help along something that's naturally going to happen anyway. Now, a little while ago, I told you that this table would float. Now, I don't know what you thought when I said that, but I wanted to say it early on. I'm going to tell you something else now about it. This coin that I had, this is really an old silver dollar from 1880. It's a magic coin that my grandfather used to carry around and he gave to me. I'm going to place this inside this box on the table. Now, I want to show you a picture of my grandfather. Walter Grant Freestone. It's really him. He was a trickster. I heard lots of great stories about it. And my mom told me they used to play a game when she was a kid where her dad and her would stand on either side of a table and they would chant, "Rise, table, rise. Rise, table, rise." Some people are shaking their heads. Maybe you've played this game. And that the table would go up. So I started playing around with that in my mind. And I want to try to play that game tonight to give somebody a feeling of astonishment. What's your name? Danny. Danny, could you help me? Would you mind helping me? Give Danny a nice round of applause. Danny, what I want you to do is I just want you to stand right there. Put your hands out just like this. Okay? Right there. Okay? When you take a look, the coin is in the box. Yeah? The coin is in the box. Okay? Watch. Put your hand down here. Hold on to this corner. Just the tips of the tablecloth. And I'm going to do the same thing. Now, I've showed you the coin. I've told you what's going to happen. I've got the picture of my grandfather up here, and I've got some nice music playing. What could possibly happen next? Ready, Danny? Just say with me. Rise, table, rise. 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 Keep saying it. Watch. Take a look. Look underneath. Yeah? Go ahead. Underneath the table, rise. Rise, 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 table. Oh, it's going down. Say one more time. Rise, table, rise. Whoa! Wait. I don't know if there's much space. Move with it. Can you move around with it? It's starting to turn, Danny. All right. Keep moving. Keep moving. Move back that way. You okay? All right. Watch the screen there. Don't say anything now. Let the table gently glide back down. Come here. Give Danny a nice round of applause. Thank you. Thanks. I don't want you to miss out. So we'll do it one more time for you and everybody else. Watch. Rise, table, rise. Watch. Whoa! Whoa. Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Steve Marshall. Next time you see a magician, sit back, relax, and be astonished. Thank you. Good night. Thanks. Thank you.
That was fantastic. Thank you, Steve. Are there any
You're welcome.
questions for Steve?
Any questions? except for what's that? What about the coin? Yeah, it's still in the box. Yeah. Hey, you want it? No, it's over. It's over here. It's a magic coin. I got a trick knee. Anyway, thank you. Yes.
What's the strangest reaction you got from an audience when showing a trick like this? What's the most dramatic thing that actually happened to somebody watching?
It's funny with stuff like with stuff that floats, and I do a trick where a card rises up out of a box. I've had people run away and scream. I mean, literally. I've had to discuss this with some religious people and some pastors that I had, because they told me that I should never call myself a magician, call myself an illusionist. And I've had other people say that, that I was in league with the devil for doing this stuff. I had some people, I was doing a show. Years ago, as a kid, I was working at a shopping mall doing card tricks. And it was a Sunday afternoon, and some people came up to me after church, and this guy got all over me and going, "You shouldn't be playing with cards. It's the devil's pasteboards and blah, 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 blah." And I go, "Pick a card. I'm just doing card tricks, man." So yeah, I mean, I have had some of that before. And, here's a weird thing. Here's an interesting with the fork bending thing. This has only happened in Japan, but I work at magic bars, and I'll go up to a table and I'll do card tricks and some coin tricks and stuff like that. And then I'll finish with the fork bending. And then they'll look at me and they'll go, "Oh, the card tricks and the coin tricks were magic, but the fork thing is real, right?" And the first time I heard it, I didn't know how to respond, because I don't want to say yes, but I don't want to say no, It's like, I don't want to take away that astonishment from them, because actually, even with adults, when they really believe in a trick, and you tell them, I tried it once. I tried telling somebody exactly how it worked. And look, the face was just like I told a kid there was no Santa Claus. It was the same exact thing. It's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, let me do another one," So yeah, so I get a lot of weird reactions like that. People think that it's real, and that surprises me, and so it still does, actually.
Are you astonished when you watch other magicians, or are you able to see what they're doing and kind of see through the show?
Good question. Yes and no. When I go to see a magic show, one of the things that's funny, I've been doing magic since I was 8 years old. I'm 51 now, so you do the math. I mean, I've been doing magic tricks for a long time. And when I go to a magic show, even after all these years, I remain a huge fan of magic. I love magic. It's my passion. I love to watch other magicians. A lot of times I watch their presentations. They're doing some of the same stuff that I know. But every once in a while, I'll see somebody who's come up with something new, something that I've never seen before, and yes, I get that feeling of astonishment. Now here's something even more interesting. I've given it to myself on occasions. This is weird, but I'll be doing a card trick, and if the audience is just right, all the stars are aligned, everything's perfect, and everything's going great, I'll forget where I am, and I'll get so into the trick that when the person turns the card over or whatever, and it's their card, I get it too. It doesn't happen that often. It's really cool when it does. It kind of throws me a little bit, But yeah, yes.
How do you learn your tricks? Since, this is a secret, right? So how do you learn?
Well, there's no Hogwarts Academy or anything like that. But, well, there are, I tell you, when I was a kid, I got a magic kit. And this is what a lot of parents come to me and they say, our kids are interested in magic. I say, get them a little magic kit that you can buy in any toy store. And that'll let you know if they really want to keep doing it. Because magic can be expensive. It's like you gotta buy props and all this stuff too. So that's the way I started. And then I started checking out books in the library. That's why every book report I did in school was about Houdini. And what I learned was, that meant I could read any magic book in the library and tell the teacher, "No, I'm doing my book report. I'm learning card tricks, So I started reading books. You can go to the library. The information's out there. You just got to dig for it. You got to know where it is. And then I joined a magic club when I was a kid, and that's when it really took off. And I met other older magicians who did then take me under their wing and teach me the real secrets and the real sleight of hand techniques. So.
Is that how it works? Is it an apprenticeship kind of model? Everyone
kind of really. here in Japan, it really does. You know, I mean, it's the whole, you know, Karate Kid thing. I know magicians in Japan that have gone through the apprenticeship where the magician, they became their apprentice, and during the day they cooked, they cleaned, they did their laundry, they did everything, and then they studied magic with them for 2 hours at night. And that was their life for like, you know, they do that for like 5 years. And then at the end of it in Japan, they actually take the name of their teacher. So the name is, there's a lineage of names that have been handed down over the years. For me, it was just, I mean, I joined a magic club. My two teachers, I had two great teachers. One was a really incredible, accomplished sleight of hand artist, still is, and the other one was a clown. And so I actually learned the comedy side and the magic side, and I put it together, and I wound up traveling with a circus for 5 years as a clown, is what I did right out of high school. Yeah. So yes, there's many different ways to learn.
Much like the Amazing Randy, you believe that Uri Geller is a fraud.
What's that?
You believe that Uri Geller is a fraud, much like the...
Yeah, well, he's a magician. I mean, he's not... You know, it's funny because he's recently come out and said that he's a magician. He actually did a lecture at a magic convention about 2 years ago. 2 or 3 years ago, he did a magic lecture and said, I'm a magician. And a lot of magicians are really mad at him still because for years he wouldn't admit it. And, you know, he was, you know, there's a line. You know, there's people like him, there's psychics. I don't want to get into this because, I mean, I'm a huge skeptic. I've never seen anything that I can't do with a magic trick, right? So I don't believe in fortune tellers. I don't believe in any of that stuff because I've never seen anything done that I can't explain somehow. And what I don't like, and this is the whole James Randi thing, is I don't like when they're pulling the wool over people's eyes and taking their money. You know, when spirit mediums, when somebody dies and they take somebody who's in mourning and just wants one more last word with their husband, and so these people find out all this information. This is a whole other talk anyway, but, you know, so that's, yeah, Uri Geller's a magician. Well, Houdini, that was his whole mission. The last years of his life was debunking psychics. Yeah, and he was really, it was great. Oh, I'm sorry, do I have a second? This is great. It was a great thing where Houdini would put disguises on, right? And he'd go into these seances, right? And nobody knew who he was. And he'd sit there, and then he'd wait till the blackout happened. The blackout in the seances when the ghosts start flying and stuff like that. And then he'd pull out a flare, a road flare in the dark. And he'd strike the flare, and he'd pull his wig off, and he goes, I am the great Houdini, and you're a fraud! You know, he couldn't just go, oh, this is fake. You know, he had to be theatrical about it. Yeah. Yes?
Is there any difference between a magician and mentalist?
Oh, that's a fine line. And, you know, in the magic and mentalism world, there's a lot of fighting about that. You know, pure mentalists don't want to use magic tricks, but they are using magic tricks. And, you know, there is. I mean, there's a difference in the presentation. You know, a magician is, you know, when you think of a magician, he's like big, flamboyant. You know, it's like the Siegfried and Roy or David Copperfield. Where a mentalist is somebody who's getting into your mind. They do stuff with mind reading things and psychic abilities. So that's just the performance style is the basic difference. A lot of the techniques are the same. Yes.
What differences do you see in the audience worldwide? You mentioned the Japanese audiences are a little bit different. What do you see in other countries?
Well, you know, I mean, I do comedy magic. So the differences I see are in the big reactions. You know, I worked for Disney for 6 years. I worked at Disney World in Florida, and then I came over to work at Tokyo Disneyland. And I had an interesting experience because I worked on the exact same stage. It's called the Diamond Horseshoe Revue. It's in Western Land. It's an old Western saloon, right? And when Tokyo Disneyland was built, each of the other Disney parks gave them a present. And what Florida gave them was the blueprints, the plans for the Diamond Horseshoe stage. So the Diamond Horseshoe in Disneyland, California, and Florida are basically the same, but they're reversed. The bar's on the other side. Tokyo and Florida is the exact same room. So the last show I did in Florida was on that stage. I saw the curtains close. The next show I did was on the exact same stage. The curtains opened. The only difference was all Japanese people, right? So bizarre, so weird. But I had to get used to that. I mean, I had to get used to that a lot. It's just they don't laugh. They don't, you know, in America, they're laughing and screaming. And in Japan, it depends on the part of Japan even you're in. You know, they're not as boisterous. I was up in Hokkaido doing a show one time in a little country place, And I thought they hated me. It was just quiet, you know. And all the other performers gave him a nickname, Ushi-sama, you know, the cow people, you know, because they just sit. That was the whole show. And it's a 30-minute show. I'm sweating. I'm thinking, I'm going through stuff fast. I think they hate me. Then I finish the show and they go, oh, and they come up and they want to shake my hands. And I was told that they were being polite. My manager said, well, they're being polite. They don't want to interrupt you by clapping or laughing or going, please interrupt me a little bit, you know. And so that took a lot of, and it was like that for the whole run there. And I really never got used to it. Even though I knew it, it was really difficult for that. And then, of course, there's cultural differences in every country you go. I get in trouble all the time. I'll go to a country and I'll say something, I'll do something. I was in Dubai and you couldn't make any references to drinking at all. You know, the royal family would come and sit on a couch and they said, don't pick the family to help out. Don't look at them. Don't breathe on them. Don't give them any attention. You know, it's like, oh, you know. And then it was kind of sad because I'd run out in the audience to get a kid to help me with a trick, and the royal family's kids were like going, pick me, you know, but I couldn't. You know, so it was kind of, but, you know, I didn't because I like my hands or whatever, so. Yeah. So, yeah, so there's a lot of differences in audiences around the world, and you really got to get used to, you know, what it is. But interestingly enough, magic is a very universal thing. Like when I go to any country, if I can't speak a word of their language, I can do a card trick, pantomime, silently, and they understand it. You know, I did a show in China. I was on a TV show in China that was broadcast to 100 million people. I didn't speak a word of Chinese. But at the end, I did comedy, and they loved it, and I wound up getting the top rating of the whole week. You know, because they understood the humor, and they understood the magic. And so that seems to be a universal thing. Yeah. Okay.
You talked about it a little bit earlier with your two teachers, and then again, like saying that you're a comedy magician. What are your thoughts about like pairing the like straight magic with like the presentation aspect?
I think it's important. I think it's really important. So there's so many thoughts on this because some magicians will say the entertainment is more important than the technique. Others will say the technique's more important than the entertainment. I personally think that they're both even. Maybe entertainment a little bit more because I've seen some really great magicians who are much better than me at sleight of hand who are really boring, you know. And I've seen some other guys that were really terrible at magic, but they were comedy magicians, you know. I think it needs to be balanced because I think if you're going to call yourself a magician, I know a lot of guys that are comedy magicians that can't do close-up magic, card tricks and coin tricks, which is where the real sleight of hand comes in. That's the real technical stuff. And I do that stuff all the time. I love doing that because I love everything about magic. But yeah, I think a combination is important. And I think I was very lucky to have those two teachers because my clown magician friend wasn't very good at magic, technically. And my magician teacher wasn't really funny. But I learned a lot from both of them. Yes?
Where's good to watch comedy, to watch magic in Tokyo?
What's that?
Where should we go to watch magic in Tokyo?
Well, there's a lot of magic bars. Interesting. That's very unique to Japan. There's a lot of them in the Ginza. I work at two places, and I'm not there all the time, but there's a place called Juji and Juniji. And it has nothing to do with what time they open. Is that what time they open? I think that was a bad choice on their part. But yeah, there's two, Juji and Juniji. They're kind of bigger places. It's like a drink. You go in, you have all you can drink for 2 hours. You get a couple of magicians come and do close-up magic, and then they have a small stage. So it's really a nice rounded place. You see close-up magic and a stage show. So I would say look up Juji and Juniji. One's in Marunouchi and one's in Shimbashi. So, and ask if I'm working. I mean, ask when I'm working, because I'm usually there at least a few times a month. I'm there on Wednesday. So, Juniji, next Wednesday night, the 28th, I'll be there. So if you want to come, please do.
Awesome.
Yep.
Round of applause for Steve.
Thank you.
Hey, it's me again. Another 7-minute break. Do your stuff. Come back in 7 minutes. I'll see you then.
Don't stop. Don't stop. Don't stop.
Hey, are you ready? Because you've got just 2 minutes to get back in your seat, catch the last talk of the evening. Get that drink, take that pee. 2 minutes.
Stop.
Hey, it's me again. I just wanted to say, in case you're just dropping in midway, that Nerd Night functions as a fundraiser for the Yokohama Theater Group, or YTG as it's known somewhere. And obviously, with things being shut down for COVID-19, things are a little tight for a nonprofit theater company. So if you want to, and I know a lot of us freelancers are kind of in a tight place because of everything having been shut down for so long, but if you can and you want to and you will, why don't you head over to ytg.jp, hit the support button, and there's a whole bunch of options there. Also a reminder, you can buy some lovely Nerd Night beakers. Those are always available, and we're happy to send them out to you since we're not in a position to sell them at the bar, obviously. All right, enjoy the rest of the show. Okay, we are back. And it is my pleasure to introduce our last speaker of the evening, Joan Chen. Joan received a BS in computer science focusing on network and security from Georgia Tech in 2013. After graduating with high hopes and ideals in the future of cybersecurity, she joined a security team in the financial sector where she faces her biggest foe: the reality of low cyber literacy levels and the lax security controls of large corporations like Facebook. Joan currently works in cyber risk management and spends most of her days reading various security policies from around the world. Woohoo! Plus, Joan is the awesomely awesome person who usually sits behind the sound controls. At the live Nerd Nights. Anyway, put your flippers together for Joan Chen.
Hi everyone! It's very weird that I can't see all y'all right now, and I'm also watching the YouTube live stream, so I feel like I'm not live yet, but I am. I'm Joan Chen. While I talk, I have to share my screen. There we go. I'm Joan Chen, and I work in cybersecurity industry field. I mainly do cyber risk assessments. So that means I look at systems, I look at designs of web applications, and I kind of figure out what the risks are, and I help with their system designs and things like that. And today, what I really want to focus on is the myths and risks in cybersecurity, and especially around passwords. Following John's talk, I think it's quite nice to like kind of learn about some things that we can do to make our systems more secure, or make not our systems, but our data more secure in our very own little way. In the cybersecurity world, we have the term best practice and good practice. And the difference is best practice is our guidelines that are provided from many regulatory bodies, many nonprofits, many governments, to try to tell you what is the most secure way for you to be able to protect your systems. However, a lot of companies will take what they learn from these best practices, and then they will implement good practices, which are things that you will, I got distracted by one of the comments, were things that you will actually implement in your systems because of some of the other security defenses you have within your system. And my goal today is to help you understand what your needs and your risks are when it comes to the web applications and systems you are using, so it can help you secure your information the best way it suits you. And yes, there is an XKCD reference coming right up. Let's see. But before that, disclaimer. This disclaimer is going to be on top of my slides for every single slide starting now on, because I don't want anyone joining halfway and be like, I know how to do passwords better than my company. Like I said earlier, there are good practices. That means that your company knows how to protect their passwords the best. And there are policies around your company like passwords. So whatever I talk about today is something I would suggest you implement on your own personal life, but not for your company passwords policies. Please follow those. They're there for a reason, and you might get fired if you don't follow them. And I'm not liable for that. There is the obligatory SKCD reference. I really like this one myself. It talks about how awful passwords is, and how we have heard a lot about guidelines around securing your passwords, and all of them sucks. Cool. So first thing first, if you're using the following passwords, change them. This is the top 20 most common passwords of 2019. It's just like the numbers right next to these passwords are the amount of instances there are on the interweb that is known to us. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we've seen 23.2 million times. And okay, so we need to talk about this a little bit. Why are common passwords so bad? Well, there are a couple reasons. The first reason is because passwords are usually hashed in a system if they're done right. This means that hashing is a one-way encryption, which means that once a password is hashed, you can't undo the hash to get the password. So the easiest way for, let's say, someone to break the hash or get the password, a hash password, is what we call rainbow tables. And what it does is it has a ton of pre-computed hashes of passwords. And once a attacker or a hacker has obtained this list of hash passwords, what they would do is they would physically compare the differences between the hashes. And if they found a match, they know they found the password to one of the systems. And here is a look of what a rainbow table, like the top 20 entry of the rainbow table looks like. As we can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is top, which means it takes less than like a second for someone to get your password if they were able to attain the hash to crack it if your password is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So change them. So with that being said, now I hope you have all gone into your like 64 instances of passwords you manage and changed them. We are now going to talk about what are strong passwords. So what do we mean when we say passwords are strong? Some of you guys might have seen guidelines around them, and there are a ton of them. Let's just take a look at some of the ones I have. That's most known around the world, and some of the ones I like. So we have Center for Internet Security, which is a nonprofit that centers around information security. Their length limit is 10 characters or more, and then they have 4 character classes, which are uppercase, lowercase letters, numbers, and symbols. Then we have Norton, which is a endpoint protection company, and they said 8 characters or more with the same character class differences. And then we have the Americans out there, your National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST. They said longest password is permissible. If they take 64 characters, you should just put in 64 characters with no exact character class limitations. It can be all numbers if you really want to. And my personal favorite is the Australia Cybersecurity Center. They're doing a slightly different approach. They said 4 words or more because their suggestion is more around a passphrase. So they would give you 4 words or more, and it adds up to 14 characters. So it can be something like teapot, iPhone, microphone, and crochet. Sorry, I'm just literally looking around my room. And that will be 4 words, 14 characters or more. The very last one is a Japanese group, and their suggestion is very similar to Norton's suggestion about 8 characters and uppercase, lowercase, numbers, and symbols. And for those who are not aware, I really want to shout out to IPS. They are that group that posts these posters around like major stations where the guy is like, I just love them. The guy here is asking the girl, can I set your birthday as my password? And the girl was like, that defeats the purpose of passwords, which is so perfect. I actually had a friend who set his phone password to be his birthday, and his birthday is public on Facebook. So I told him to change that. Anyhow, sorry, let me get back on track. Oh, okay. So is that it? Like, is that all the guidelines to a strong password? So like this password 1, 2, 3, 4, is that a strong password? No, not exactly. Actually, not at all. There's more guidelines to strong passwords. It looks something more like this. You can't use your username as your passwords. No names of family members, friends, or pets. No birthday, no phone numbers, no license plates, no sequences or repetitions, no dictionary word, no real word from any language. Sorry, this is very long. You don't have to read it. There's just a lot of guidelines around it. The only one guideline around it that Australia permits is you are allowed to use dictionary words and real words, but that's it. So with these guidelines, I was like, how can I show you guys a strong password? Well, there are nifty password generators on the internet, so I generated one, and this is what it looks like. I kind of like this one because it tells you, like, this is how you can remember your password. And I can tell you, even after looking at this slide a couple times, I still have not remembered this password. And it's not my password, so it's okay. So I found myself, when it comes to passwords, I found myself asking these questions a lot. Like, why are they so terrible? And who invented something so painful? Well, it actually dates back to the 1960s. I hope some of you guys recognize this. This is a CTSS, which is a compatible time-sharing system that is developed in MIT. And this is the very first system where passwords were introduced to. And what happened was it wasn't secure. The very first set of passwords in the computing history was not secure. There was in 1966, one of the sysadmins actually displayed one of the user passwords in their like message of the day kind of pop up, like just put it right there, just showed everyone this user's passwords. And later on, we also learned that in 1962, one of the students actually went in and was able to submit a print job to print out the whole list of passwords. And the reason why he did that was because this is a one big computing source shared by multiple like terminals. They had to allocate certain amount of time where the students can use these computers. So this person, in order wanting to spend more time using this computing resource, he printed out other people's passwords so he could impersonate the other students and use their systems. So there, you have it. Passwords were never secure, and it was never meant to be used to block out malicious actors. And that's why it's so painful, and there are so many complicated guidelines around them. And okay, with that being said, now we have this very strong password that's on the screen right now. What is the worst thing you can do to this password? Well, our favorite Mark Zuckerberg gave us the best answer to that. I don't know if you guys were aware. Mark Zuckerberg had his Twitter, Pinterest, and I think also Facebook. I'm not sure on that one, don't quote me on that one, hacked earlier this year. And the reason is because someone happened to find out that his password was DA. And he didn't just use it once. He used the same passwords for other social media accounts. So when you have a strong password, don't use them multiple times. At least try not to. Like, okay, you guys can argue that is a very weak password. So maybe someone cracked it and then was able to like repeat it. But like then you're thinking to yourself, but if I have a strong password, then that's okay, right? Because it's not easily compromised. So repeating it shouldn't be that bad. Well, wrong. Remember how just like a moment ago, I talked about CTSS storing passwords in plain text? Well, turns out it happens in a lot of other places too. So there's this very nifty website called ghostproject.fr. It actually has the ability to display all plain text passwords that is paired with their usernames that has been used in the past. I decided to laugh at myself a little bit. The very last entry down there is my very first email that I ever created back in elementary school. And there you go. It has my password right here. And I can verify that is the password. And I'm not going to explain the rest. So really, in order to get the rest of these digits or digits behind here, all they have to do is donate. And let's say if my account is attached to like, a couple $1 million, I bet this donation wouldn't look so awful after all. So, and okay, what about now? Are there passwords being stored in plain text now? The answer is still yes. And it's still, sorry, Mark, great guy, but man, Facebook. 2019, Facebook had a password leak because they were storing passwords in plain text and they were leaked to the entire employee. It leaked about 600 million passwords last year. And also, if you wanted to find out more of these awful moments, there's a whole website called Plain Text Offenders that tells you where on which websites that passwords are stored in plain text. You can look through it. There's a lot of them. Okay. So instead of having one password, you actually have something look more like this, I would say. You'll have one password for Twitter, one password for Amazon, one for Netflix, one for Google, one for Lockdown, whatever you use. The average amount of passwords a user is managing in one moment of their life averages around 64 passwords. I'm going to say that number is going to increase to the future as we move more towards cloud-based applications and more people on the internet and all that. So how are we supposed to handle these? Well, here's my suggestion. And disclaimer, follow your company's policy for your company credentials. But you can take a look at what I have to say for your own credentials. 1, you have to assess the risk. And 2, you write it down. Yes, write down your passwords. And 3, put in MFA if you feel necessary. So what does assess the risk mean? Well, risk is possibility times impact. So a possibility is how possible can something be compromised. So in our case, it would be password cracking or any kind of way of obtaining a password. And the impact will be usually in dollar values if you work in a company, about how much money they can lose, about on reputation and things like that. So I'm going to do a really quick risk assessment on these 3 accounts that I actually have in real life. And I'm going to kind of talk you through how to assess the risk for these accounts. So I have a Nintendo account, and it has these following information. So it has a fake name. They know I'm a girl. They know I live in Japan, and kind of my email address, but that one you actually can't obtain unless you enter my password. And then there's that. My Nintendo account is actually tied to my PayPal, which uses another 2 layers of authentication for me to be able to do any purchases. So technically, if I look at this as a risk assessment, I would say the impact is quite low. The worst thing that can happen if someone obtains my Nintendo account is lock me out of my account, but they can't really get into any like non-public data. You can see that I blocked out my birthday, not because I think it's like extremely terrible for you guys who know my birthday, but I think it's kind of nice to just not have it there. But like I say, there are nothing that's super critical in here, so I would actually rate the impact quite low, which means even if I have a shorter password or a less secure password for my Nintendo account, the risk actually doesn't come out too high. And then next, we have Amazon, which has these, my credit card number and my addresses. And that one I would consider quite significant. I really don't want anyone to have any of these information about me. So what I did for Amazon is I actually not just use a very strong password, I also added a second level of authentication on top of that, because I think having these information being compromised, the impact is very high. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to lower the possibility of the compromise of happening so I can balance out the risk. And the very last one is Twitter. The reason why I put Twitter is I think a lot of people would evaluate this differently. For me, my Twitter looks kind of like this. You have a username, you have my phone number, which I don't really like, but you also have an email, and then that's it. Some messages that are private to me. But as you can see, I don't really use, hi Amanda, I don't really use my Twitter that much when it comes to messages. So there isn't really much, I haven't shared any like addresses or any like really like stuff that on Twitter, over Twitter messages that I am afraid of being compromised with. So for me personally, I would say that my Twitter account impact with being compromised is quite low. But some of you might have shared certain things over Twitter, like messages that you don't want other people to see. Like I know that like people will sometimes email like credit card details, which I don't like, message each other credit card details, which I don't recommend, but things like that. So you have to really look over your accounts and then kind of identify what are the critical accounts for you, what holds the most critical information. And then those are the ones that you want very, very strong authentication on. So that's kind of the assess the risk part. And then you write it down in a notebook that you keep at home only. Maybe lock the drawer, but not with your user email and user ID in the same notebook. This is the last point is very important. You don't want someone to be, let's say, if someone has managed to break into your house, find that drawer, open that drawer, break into that drawer, you don't want them to be able to identify which passwords are associated to which accounts and which user ID. But writing it down, actually in this digital age, can actually be more secure than you putting it on your desktop in a file that's plain text saying named password. And also, it's also safer than giving it away to any plain text services. But if you're more digital savvy and you wanted your passwords on the go with you, I would say write it down in a password manager. There are a lot of good ones out there. You want ones with good reputation. I would say if they like ask for a small fee, that might actually be better than a free service. I just sometimes don't trust free services. There are really good ones out there. We know LastPass is a very big one. Dashline has become really big recently in the cybersecurity world. A lot of people are promoting them. OnePass is also one. There are a lot of them out there you can look at. And with that, you want a very strong master password. And you can write that master password down and store it in a locked drawer. That's fine. But make sure your master password is really, really, really strong, because that literally decrypts the rest of your credentials. If you're really paranoid, I would say use multiple services. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. That's okay. Be paranoid. Okay, last but not least, if you have really critical accounts, like for me, Amazon is very critical. All my email accounts are very critical because they're usually how I recover passwords if someone resets it. Use multi-factor authentication. So when we say multi-factor, we're really talking about these three factors: what you know, what you have, and what you are. What you know are things that you have memorized, passwords, any like data, information, birthdays, phone numbers, license plates, anything like that. What you have are physical things you own, like your phone, a security token, a UB key, if you know what that is. And what you are tends to be biometric data. So your fingerprints, your iris, and a lot of like blood veins are ones too that can be used. So when you're trying to do multi-factor authentication, what you're trying to do is you're going to kind of have to want to pick 2 out of the 3 and then mix that up. Or you can do all 3, really. What you want to avoid is only have one factor. If you do a password and a birthday, that's one factor, because that's both things what you know. So you kind of want to mix those 3 up. So these are some current implementations of multi-factor authentication on top of passwords. So what we're very usually see right now is we'll have a password, and maybe you'll have a secure ID. Maybe you'll get a one-time password over your messages. Maybe you use Google Authenticator. I am a big fan of Google Authenticator just because it's very easy to get to. And also that also means that you're not having your one-time password sent over messages because that is not always secure either. Or they will be matched with a biometric data like Face ID and Finger ID. But yeah, so with that being said, we have seen some real life government, like a lot of government has been really behind when it comes to authentication and protecting like cybersecurity, but we've seen a lot of government really getting on board when it comes to multi-factor authentication. So for example, this is Singapore right here, we're seeing right now. They have Corp Pass, and they have a 2-factor authentication where you have a mobile token where they display a 6-digit number, and then you actually have to unlock your phone using your fingerprint or your biometric data or your PIN, and then you punch in the 6 digits that they show you on the screen at the moment for login purposes. And we see something very similar with Australia. For people who are looking for guidelines around cybersecurity, I actually really recommend some publications from Australia. The government has done really good jobs these past couple months trying to keep up, to be ahead of the trend here. So take a look at them. I definitely suggest some of their publications. Well, in the end, I want to talk a little bit about the future, because the passwords are still around and that's still painful. So what are the future of authentication? What could it look like? Well, the very first one is no passwords. That is actually a very real possibility right now. There's a FIDO framework. There's something called a FIDO framework out there, which takes something called WebAuthn, which is a public key cryptography method, with CTAP, which is something like it's a cert that was stored in the either a UB key or a physical cert stored in your computer and things like that. I'm very glad that John talked about key encryption, so I'm going to skip that and tell you how this actually works. So how by the FIDO framework works is that it takes the key and it tells the services that this computer is legit because the key is on this computer, which makes this computer is legit. But that is not enough because someone can compromise your physical device. And that's how we need the second factor of either YubiKey or your fingerprint to tell the service that you are the one accessing this computer. So this is how the multi-factor is done in the FIDO framework world. And a lot of services is actually using that right now. My favorite one is PayPal. PayPal actually has implemented this framework and it's doing quite well. And that's why I have all my accounts linked to PayPal. And then also feature biometrics. This is a really fun one. Embedded earphone. They're actually looking at the structure of the inside of your ear. And the reason is because fingerprints can be taken and the Face ID can be hacked. Like twins, like the twin attack is very much a thing that people outline when they talk about Face ID hacks. But the inner ear is different for everyone. And you can't take a photo of it. And you can't that data is very much harder to obtain than fingerprints in your face. And then there's other ones called behavior biometrics, which are things like how you move your mouse and how you type. So just imagine a future where you just type your password and that's immediately a multi-factor authentication because you type your password differently than like someone else. Like the dwell time and the release time and the flight time are all different. So things like that are what can happen for the future. And with that, that's my presentation. I know Amanda asked if I have social media accounts I can share with you guys, but as a security person, I don't actually have any public social media accounts that really talks about my work. So if you have any questions or if you want to discuss anything further, if you have any concerns, feel free to email me right there. I will respond. But yeah, change your passwords, add multi-factor authentication, and have a good night's sleep.
Well, not yet. Not just yet, Joan. So first, Joan, thank you so much for your talk. And I'm just going to see if anyone's got any questions over here. Melvin asked, will there be an XKCD reference? But I guess that was right at the beginning of the talk.
Yes, I did answer that. Yes. That's the one. That was the message that distracted me. Okay, I'm okay with no questions.
Do people have no questions on that? Seriously? But didn't John have something in his presentation about biometrics not being a great idea because basically someone can grab your hand and like put it on something?
Biometrics itself has a lot of debates over how secure it is. Some people don't like them because it's also like how they're handling your biometrics data because you can't change your fingerprint, right? So let's say if someone has your fingerprint, metadata, that's it. So like it's very easy for people to undo that. So when I give my biometric data, so I personally use finger ID. The thing that I look out for is I do read the privacy and protection. I like kind of search through the privacy and protection and security outlines for different companies and kind of figure out where my data is being stored. It's the same thing. So when it comes to encryption, if a company tells you that they encrypt something, what I will look out, the next question you should ask is where is the key? Where are they storing my keys that leads to all my data? So everything is kind of relative when it comes to security. Like you can implement a ton of things that's supposed to make you secure, but then miss out on other things. So biometric data is a really interesting one when it comes to, it really depends on how the data is being handled. So yeah.
Okay, Don in the private chat, he's a rather snarky question. How many of the email addresses that you showed are you comfortable now having on YouTube forever?
I'm quite comfortable. joanmouse@chemo.com is no longer in use. You can email that as much as you want. I actually changed that password already, and I can't remember what it is, so I can't take it down. Mistakes I made when I was a kid. And then the other one, actually, the funny one was the other one, not this one I have displayed, but the Joan J. Summersy, and that one actually got a email that has an attachment in there a couple of weeks ago, and I saw it and I was like, that's not good. A lot of ways where you'll find that if don't open. Oh, sorry, I feel like I should backtrack. Don't open any of the files from unknown human beings. always do a quick file check. Like especially PDFs.
Do we need to still tell people that in 2020?
Yes, we still need, like, I mean, people are stealing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for their passwords, so I'm pretty sure we still need to tell people that. Phishing is still one of the top ways to compromise someone's computer, especially during COVID-19, the period of COVID-19, because a lot of people have now moved to shipping their own stuff. So a lot of the phishing email actually comes in as, oh, your package is meant to be delivered, or you have a package waiting for you. Those are actually one of the bigger emails that has came in throughout the COVID-19 period of time because of through phishing, and that is still very much relevant today, especially now. Actually, with the adversaries being more sophisticated, there's also a lot of spear phishing attempts where it's very targeted, and those are much harder to detect actually.
So John asks, how do you feel about remembering passwords versus changing them to something you own?
Remember, I might need some help from John to figure out what he meant by changing them to something you own. So are we discussing about not using passwords? If we're talking about not using password at all and then using like tokens and things like that, I'm very much a fan. But I think it goes back to, if you are thinking about moving away on passwords and only implementing tokens, then I would still suggest having a two-factor kind of authentication going on. Remembering versus YubiKey. What threat models do you use differently? Yeah. So for remembering versus YubiKey, I like YubiKey much better. It's not because of well, there is reasons behind besides
you're
like
a shareholder.
No, I wish I'm not, unfortunately. But I definitely like YubiKeys and like local certs better because it's one, easier to protect, and two, users do less stupid stuff with them. Passwords are just, because of the nature of what password policies are, if we ask the user to remember their password, the trends we've seen so far, if we said to remember a password, they either have a really weak password, or they have a password that they share with multiple accounts. And every time we ask them to change them, they just like kind of increment it. So like, let's say it's password 1234. Next time it probably be password 1235. Like that's kind of the trends we're seeing out there. And that's why I'm very much a fan of using something else besides passwords. Like I say, passwords were never designed to be like the thing to protect you from people trying to get your data.
I see. All right. So I'm not seeing any other questions in the thread. So, like, last chance, guys. We're gonna vamp for about 30 seconds if someone wants to type another question. Let the video catch up with us. Yeah. So I'm trying to vamp and I can't. I'm too tired.
I think I've talked plenty for people to come up with questions. I just think we're letting off early, like easy today.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, what do you think? So I guess the downside to having it be something you own is that, I mean, that's a lot easier to lose than something you store in your head. Right?
That's very true.
If you lose your token, then like that's it, your account. If it's a secure account, then it's locked, right?
Yes.
If it's not a secure account, then maybe they can unlock it for you. But Melvin
Ooh, I like that question,
so I'm
Melvin.
going to read it so that people can hear it. How do you feel about forcing people to regularly change their passwords?
Great. I'm going to read my disclaimer again. Follow your company's policy for company credentials. A lot of companies do require people to change their password regularly. I personally, as a person, I don't like it. I think asking people to change their password and having details being like you have to have, it has to be different from the previous 2 passwords and things like that makes password management a lot harder. The way, like if you have a reason to believe your account is compromised, yes, change your password. But if you have a secure enough password, so we're talking about, I like to say 14 characters just because that is, 14? Like 10 characters
just 14?
Is good. I mean, okay, if we want to go with NIS, I said 64. But like 14 is acceptable in these days. So I would say 14 characters and above with 4 character classes or a very secure passphrase. Any of the guidelines that was provided earlier, find the one that you think you believe in and implement that, then you should be fine for now. I would keep, if you plan on never changing your password, I would keep an eye out on any security announcements coming from these companies. Like Google does a really good job telling you like things are being compromised. Technology is always improving when it comes to password cracking. So if you don't plan on changing your password, just keep an eye out about like what the newest standards are. And if you think your password is way out of time, like for a while it was 6 characters, that please change. Change them according when policy changes.
So Dawn had a question, but before I go on to that, I'm just going to follow up on that because there's a comment. My personal frustration is going on a website that has all these like a bank websites, which frequently have like a maximum of 12 characters that you can use. They're limiting you to alphanumeric, no symbols, and you're like, I can't use any actual secure password now. Like even if it's random, it's still. Yeah. It's or just websites where they have like I put in a 42 character password and it's like, oh, it needs to have one of these special characters in it. I'm like, are you kidding me? Anyway, sorry, that's just my frustration with stupid password policies. So Don, why don't you start? Are you only on the back channel? Is that why your questions are here? Can you be forced, he asks, to use your inner ear to unlock a device? I mean, or your fingerprint or your iris, etc. Because I think this goes back to what John was talking about. I mean, obviously it varies from country to country, but he's saying like in the U.S. He talked actually in the chat. He said something about the U.S. Fifth Amendment protects like you having to say your password, but not necessarily giving your finger or your tongue or inner ear or nose hairs or whatever it is.
That is a very real risk out there. Like, yes, someone can force you to provide any kind of mild biometric if it doesn't require you to be alive, or it doesn't require you to like be mobile. That's a very good point. That is correct. That's definitely a risk. So that's something that I guess the people, whoever is developing biometrics, will have to think about. Maybe they'll add a 2-factor of a biometric. Like you must have a beating heart rate under like a certain amount, so you're not having an adrenaline rush, and then they'll take your ear. I don't know, something like that. Sorry, before you go into the next one, I do want to address your frustration earlier. That's why I want to mention Australia. I mentioned the Australia government a ton tonight. A lot of governments have regulations about what certain companies need to implement when it comes to security, and a lot of companies out there takes those recommendations as if they were best practices, and that's actually the bare minimum. So that's why you have a lot of companies like making you implementing things that are insecure. That feels insecure because they're meeting the regulatory requirement, but that doesn't mean that they are actually like meeting the best the best practice. Like there's a very big gap between requirement and best practice, and the reason behind that is the government really can't implement something that like they need a bare minimum, so they're not fining everyone across the country. So there's that gap there, which is very real.
Right, and there's also limitations on like bank systems, which don't seem to be upgraded, more than once every 2 decades. Victor has a question on YouTube. There are some services offering to hack someone's email address. Do you know how they work? How do they hack emails?
I think that's a very big question. I think there's many ways to hack email addresses. I think I need a little bit more detail. I think everyone must have their own way to do it. Phishing is a good start. Usually social engineering is a good start. I don't know if you guys seen this video. Oh, I wish I can pull it up. Maybe I'll pull it up later. Maybe I'll ask Amanda and Andrew to share it with you guys later. There's this video about social engineering where a woman called a phone company on behalf of a guy, getting the guy asked her to try it out. And she was able to not just get his password, change his password for his phone company login, and was also able to add herself to his account and then lock him out. So there are many ways for you to hack into email accounts. I would say phishing is probably the easiest way to start. Getting some malware onto a company onto a computer, get a keylogger on there. I think social engineering is a very easy one. Just to get into someone's emails. It really also depends on what kind of email account we're talking about. Like if it's a very insecure one that has by like a small company that has plain text passwords, like storing somewhere that someone can easily get into, or it can be Google where you have multi-factor authentication on top of it. Like there's a very big range of how you can hack into someone's email.
And of course, like just data exploits databases, right? Like stuff that was like the PlayStation Network hack, and those emails and passwords are out there if someone hasn't changed them, I guess. So
reusing passwords
Yeah.
for your email and other things is one too.
Yeah. So Andrew wants to know, other Andrew, Bruce wants to know, he said earlier you mentioned rainbow tables. Are those still relevant in the age of password salts and resource-hungry hashing algorithms like script? Salty.
So let's address, so for people who don't know what salt is so hashes are very predictable because hashing is kind of putting the algorithm onto a password. So it's the same password plus the hash will equal the same password. And what a salt does is it adds a couple more like characters and bytes in front of your password. So when it hashes it, it comes out a different hash every time. And this is random. But the thing is, a salt usually ranges about 1 bit to 64 bytes. So you can actually go online right now and you can search up rainbow tables with hashes. Those files are huge. They're gigantic. Like they're a couple terabytes. So like, does hashing protect you from small, like, those like small hackers with like, limited resources? Yes, salting does very much do that. If we're talking about nation states and bigger threat actors, like those APTs out there, APTs are like gigantic hacking groups. They're called shortened for active persistent threat. Sorry. And they have a lot of resources when it comes to being able to crack passwords. So the whole idea of having a secure password is you delay. Like it's not unbreakable. You're just delaying the amount of time they'll take to break into your password. So adding a hot hash, salt to your hash, yes, is a way to do that. And same thing goes to script. Yes, it's very resource hungry. So it's like it kind of just reduces the amount of probability of your passwords being cracked, but it doesn't eliminate it.
Right. And your next question, which you may not want to answer given it comes from CCP official number 18. Are the two-step verification methods really worth it in terms of security gains? Like mandating the text verification every login, I find it annoying sometimes.
It is annoying, and that's why I talked about assessing your risk. Like full disclosure, my Nintendo account is a single-factor login. There are a couple services that I definitely suggest you have like two-step verifications. Yes, it's annoying, but like what's the payoff here, right? Like figuring out like what's more important, like being annoyed every time you log in or having it like compromised. So for example, the one that I definitely have two-step verification is all my Gmail accounts. All the ones that you see on like now is recorded on YouTube forever. Great. I'm gonna have to start like parsing through my emails more carefully starting now on. All of my Gmail accounts have multiple layers of authentication. And the reason behind that is those are recovery accounts. So let's say, the same week where I got a strange email account was the week where I also got a strange notification that someone tried to reset my Facebook password. And that goes straight to my Gmail. And I was like, okay, well, let's make sure that they didn't hack into my Gmail. And thank goodness gracious, my Gmail traces are clean. I haven't found anything else. Also, the good thing was they tried to hack into one of those like Facebook accounts you make in high school where you're like super emo and you never used it again. It's one of those ones, so I went ahead and deleted it. But that's why we talk about assessing the risk of what needs the two-factor authentication and what doesn't, and that's something that you have to decide on your own. So I can't help you.
I'm in favor of a little annoyance. I've known people who've been hacked, and it is not fun, and it can take years to deal with like the fallout if it's.
Both of my parents has accounts being hacked before, so I'm like, guys, you guys are literally the biggest risk factor of my life.
Yeah, because that's people don't necessarily need to hack like your account directly. They can hack your friend's account. Yeah.
and you don't question what they send you, right? If your friend like, look at this video, it's so funny, boom, there you go.
I do. I get rid of friends who send me, hey, look at this video. I mean, other than my mother who does that constantly, but yeah. Actually, I'm joking. My mother doesn't done that constantly in a long time. Another family friend who does that. Anyway, I say that because my mother's probably listening. Okay, so I think we can wrap it up there unless someone wants to stop me. But oops, just want to make sure. Yeah, so I'm going to vamp for 30 seconds just in case someone's yelling, stop, don't go yet. But Joan, thank you so much for your talk. And I'm a little disappointed you didn't make a table levitate, but you did tell us all about passwords, which is probably more useful to our lives.
I mean, cybersecurity and magic are both about deception, so
wait.
Technically the
you know what? I'm going to squeeze one last question under the wire because I think it's a good one. Will the emergence of quantum computing change, like, the usefulness of passwords, I guess is the question there.
Yes, it will. The answer is quite simple. Yes, it will. It changes the way how computing works. It changes how encryption works. That's why we do very much closely look at technologies like this and where they are current state. Right now, it seems like there's nothing to be super worried about, but who knows? A couple years. I'd say 5, but don't take my word for granted. I'm not a quantum computing
Everything's
expert.
5 to 10 years. Everything that's
maybe
going to happen 5 to 10 years. Quantum computing 5 to 10 years. Cure for cancer 5 to 10 years. Time travel 5 to 10 years.
Yes, everything.
Negative 10 years.
But I do want to put something out there. I know we talked a lot about hacking and in security and things being insecure. I want to point out that hackers are malicious hackers are human beings. Your cyber defense people are human beings. There is very much you have to be aware of how you are securing yourself, but there are teams out there that are helping you keep your data safe. So if you're like, oh my God, all my data is not safe anymore, I would say you don't have to be super worried. Like, you don't have to be paranoid. There's a lot of brilliant people out there. I actually was just talking to a couple of people earlier today, and a lot of brilliant people out there also trying to help secure your data and help protect kind of in general the civilization.
Okay, and on that note, again, thank you so much, Joan. I'm going to hold on. I got to do some flipping over here so I can get my script for the end of the show. And so yeah, you stay on the line, but you can wave goodbye because I'm going to switch over to a slide now. Boom. And okay, there we go. Joan, thank you so much, and a big thank you to all of our speakers tonight. John, Virtual Steve, and Joan, who I just mentioned. Also, thank you to Dawn and Ian working behind the scenes to help out. And huge thank you to Amanda, who was especially busy this month on a secret project, but still made everything come together. Amanda, you are an impressive and, frankly, astonishing person. And now I got to advance the slide. Oh, it worked! I wasn't sure whether that was going to work. A big thank you to all of you for joining us online. Please remember that Nerd Night is back on July 17th with another cadre of 3 smart speakers, so why not join us again as the curious crowd? And in case you joined us super late, this is just a reminder, I'm sneaking under the wire, that Nerd Night Tokyo is a fundraiser for the Yokohama Theater Group, and if you enjoyed yourself tonight, and you are able to, please head over to ytg.jp and support us. That's also where you will find our wonderful beakers. So, from Yokohama, Japan, for Nerd Night Tokyo, this is Andrew Wilner bidding you good night, and see you next time. Good night, everybody.